Okay, there we go.
All right. Good morning.
Good morning, Dr. Lucky. It's so good to see you. It's so good to see you again, to sit down and have an opportunity to talk with you. We had a chance to talk in our my initial consultation when I first came to you, and I've really enjoyed our conversations ever since. We've had little snippets of them since then, and I'm really looking forward to getting deeper into your work. And getting into some of the connections. I think we'll talk about today, some of the connections between acupuncture, traditional Chinese medicine, psychology, and I'm sure you got a big brain, I think. So I think we'll get into a lot of different areas. I'm looking forward to seeing where this goes. Um, but maybe I'll start with some introductions today. Is that okay?
Sure.
Okay, so I'll introduce myself. My name is Chris Bernardo. I'm a licensed psychologist in the state of Michigan. I'm a doctoral student at the School of Michigan, the Michigan School of Psychology, where I have my master's. I practice out of Ann Arbor, a place called Arbor Wellness, and I'm doing internships as well at school. And I mainly practice with in terms of helping people with anxiety, depression, men's issues, trauma. And I think some of these things that I specialize in, I'd like to incorporate them into our discussion today. I think they'll be relevant. With that said, Dr. Lucky, could you introduce yourself and give us some of your bona fides here?
Sure. Sure. My name is Lucky. My real name is Guantong Li. People keep butchering it, so I go by Lucky because all my life, my friends have been saying, "Oh, you're so lucky." You know, when I was studying acupuncture in China, they said, "Oh, that's so great. You know, you get to go to America and practice that, make big money over there." And then when I getting my doctorate in America, they said, "Wow, you're so lucky. You have a Chinese heritage. Your mother practiced acupuncture, so you have the roots, and you're Chinese practicing acupuncture in America." So I said,
Yes.
yeah, my name is Lucky, by the way. And then they said, so that stuck.
Wow.
But yeah, as far as my acupuncture lineage, it traces back 300 years. My immediate family have always been acupuncturists, but I was able to get a master or get a teacher that teaches me acupuncture that traces in the Taoist lineage. And I know that was something that you love to touch on as well. So I would go into that. My doctorate. So I have graduated, but I have, there's been stalls on actually completing the actual doctorate certificate. So at this moment, I wouldn't call myself a doctor yet. I'm getting IRB approval because I'm presenting a new theory on acupuncture, to how to use acupuncture to change someone's destiny.
Wow, that's quite a theory. Change destiny. That's very alluring. I would love to read this dissertation. It's very ambitious.
Yeah, thank you.
But I guess you'd be the guy to go to. I mean, they call you Lucky since the beginning. That's a great nickname, by the way. I've had a few nicknames in my life. None of them have been as great. So I just stick to my own name. Well, that's a pretty fortunate one.
Thank you. Thank you.
Man, I'd love to start right there. Also, it's interesting that your mom was an acupuncturist as well. So this really is your heritage, and I consider my father is a psychologist as well, and I feel I wonder if you have any reflections on. I feel like greatly honored to be in the same life path as in a profession that I hold in high regard, and it's not really that common these days for kids for children to practice in the same area as their parents. I mean, this used to be the way of the world that we would just go automatically into whatever our parents did, but these days it's kind of rare, but I consider it a real privilege to be able to do that.
Wow.
A lot of shared knowledge. Is this a similar perspective for you?
Yep, you put it very politely. Practicing with your parent, your mother, is not always fun and games. It
Okay.
involves with you never doing anything right, and
Okay.
and then when you come home, some of the work comes home as well. And plus,
Sure.
I wasn't really paid. So it's in the Asian culture, you're an apprentice gopher and everything else as well, right? So you're there to learn, so you're there to serve. But I think that's actually what made me competent in all the different things that I do in regards to starting with running my business, because I was the person that's doing the accounting, I was the person doing the marketing, I build the websites.
All the stuff that's not in school. They don't
I
tell you.
know, and this is not to brag, but I literally had to do everything because my mother also had a language barrier. She's
Mm,
a straightforward lady due to cultural difference. You know, if you come in overweight, she said, you need to lose weight, but over, come over here, we're gonna get some acupuncture. Right. You can see how in a modern society, especially in the US, that won't be very well received. So she has all kinds of bad reviews. But due to her, the nature of who she is.
Sure.
But as for someone that grew up here, I learned to better adapt, right? So we just need to present ourselves differently and be more gentle with our patients, because
Sure.
after all, right, we're here for them.
Sure.
Yeah.
I think some people appreciate a straightforward approach, but I could see how that she might get some some poor reviews from some people. I can certainly understand that.
What about
Uh,
you? Did you practice with your father as well?
My father retired just as I was getting into school, so we never got a chance to practice together. But I use him as a supervisor and as a teacher. And I think that he instilled a lot of the general principles of psychology and philosophy of life in me well before I was ever headed into this field. So um, he's very there's a patient, kind of gentle kind of soul, with a lot of wisdom. So I really get a lot of free supervision from him. I have other supervisors. We all have supervisors, but you pay a lot for them and it's only an hour. And sometimes when I'm really stuck, I can just go say, hey dad, let's grab a burger. And I got a case, let's talk about it. And that's invaluable. There's so much to know in this field.
Wow.
Yeah. Yeah, so we never got a chance to work together, but it's been a wonderful relationship. It's taken on a new dimension since I began. So it's been, yeah, very gratifying.
That's great. I can see that. And I can see that behavior through you as well. Just the way that I've interacted with you. So good for you.
Oh, thank you.
You're
Oh,
welcome.
you're sparking so many questions. I'd like to. I'm just going to jot down some questions for myself here as we go along. I'll try and do it as I'm talking. Getting good at that in therapy. Um, so I'd like to come back to that. I'd like to come back to the dissertation, but I was thinking maybe we can, right in the initial starting period, maybe I can talk about my experience coming in to get acupuncture and what that was like for me and what I noticed and some of the questions that came up for me. Would
Sure.
that be okay?
Yeah.
Okay, cool. So I think I probably came in with just about the level of knowledge that most Americans would, maybe a little bit more familiar. I had done acupuncture a couple of times, but the way that you practice and speak was very different from that also. For one thing, they put needles in my back and didn't check my tongue. You stuck mostly to the face, hands, and feet and ankles. Um, and went into more depth about the science behind what you were doing, which I appreciate. And I do think of it as science, but it's also the principles are very, very different from Western thinking. So when I came in, I was part of me was really on board and very excited to see what happened. But of course, this won't be a surprise to you. Part of me is skeptical and thinking, okay, this is such a different paradigm. It's been around for what, 5,000 years? I'm trying to remember.
Yeah. Close to 5,000 years.
5,000 years.
Hmm.
So there must be something to it. Nothing sticks around for that long if it's just a placebo effect. In my mind, it's very unlikely. So I wanted to give it the benefit of the doubt. So when I came in, I had issues with fatigue. Just to give people an idea of why I was coming in, I felt very tired, a bit bummed out, had some restless leg syndrome, and a lot of tension in my neck.
Hmm.
And when you sat down, you would sort of explain to me in a very different language than what I was used to hearing what was going on. Can you, I would restate it, but I'm afraid I'm going to mess it up. Could you tell me kind of your initial conceptualization of the issues I was coming in for?
Sure.
Or what might be the
Actually,
issues? Yeah,
um, I'm not sure exactly. I'd have to, because I see quite a few patients, but I could tell
I'm
you,
sorry, I could have given you some notice on that one.
yeah, I could tell you kind of, for a practitioner at the beginning is that you are, for acupuncturists, you're like a technician, right? So a technician comes in, someone has fatigue. Okay, let's see what points treat fatigue. So then they will just put the points for fatigue.
Mhm.
And then the next level would be, okay, well, let's treat the overall pattern, right? So most people would then treat, say, okay, let's say this person's feeling fatigue. So that's, Shao Yin, Shao Yang. So that's related to the kidney and the heart. So this person is not sleeping well, most likely perhaps some kind of anxiety. So they treat that, right? And then we get, after a while, you do that for a while, you start recognizing patterns. And
Mm,
that maybe segues into perfectly into explaining acupuncture. So
yeah,
if you
please.
don't mind, I'll just jump right into that.
That was a question coming, so please, yeah.
Yeah. So the yin and yang, we all have seen this picture of this like two kind of like fish with the two dots with the black and white, the yin and yang symbol. So the yin and yang symbol captures the spirit of the Taoist philosophy and also
Mm,
acupuncture. Acupuncture is derived from the Taoist philosophy where there is yin and yang in this world, right? So yang is the day, yin is the night. And for humans, we kind of capture this as right, male and female. Although modern day, right, there's discussions about whether there's more than two. There's actually six. So for yang, we break it down into Tai
There's
Yang.
six, there's six genders, or there's six forms of yin and yang?
There's six different categories of yin and yang.
Oh, okay,
So
okay,
there's three types of yang and three types of yin.
okay.
As we observe the sky, just kind of like, telling you the story. So bear with me here. So you look in the sky, you see that it's really bright, but it doesn't all of a sudden just go to night, right? There's a transition. So
Yes.
you get the noontime, okay, so which is Taiyang, which means that this sun is the brightest, this yang is at its full expression, okay? And then we have Shaoyang, which is what we call a lesser yang, right? Which means that this is a lesser sun,
Mm,
okay? And then we have Yangming, which is this transition. It's kind of like I don't see the sun on the sky in the sky, but it's still bright. Yeah, I don't see the moon, I don't see the stars. Okay.
okay.
Then we transition into yin. So there's Shao Yin, which is lesser yin. Okay. This is not completely dark yet. I can't see the stars, I can't see the Milky Ways. Okay. And then it's Tai Yin, which is twilight, totally darkness. Okay. And then there's Jin, which is when yin transitioning into yang. I feel like, right, these six aspects could then apply to all aspect of different things. So let's
Okay.
play a game and say that, okay,
I'm sorry, can I ask a clarifying
yeah,
question?
go ahead. Mhm.
This is so new that I'll have to ask you. I'm just a
Sure.
very, very beginner here. So,
Yeah.
so what I'm picturing is, as you're describing it, the three different types there. So are these, this is a hard, I hope this question comes across clearly. Is it something like each aspect of yin and yang is like sort of along a gradient?
Mhm.
Are in terms of sort of like strength or power? And or does each of the six types have specific qualities? Does it just refer to like the amount of strength of the yin quality and yang quality, or do these actually have, if this makes sense, like certain qualities in each of these different categories? Does that make sense?
Yep, absolutely.
Okay.
So for example, let's take some celebrity personalities that we know that is similar to these things, right? So let's
Okay.
say Young, right, would be the sun. So this is like a really active person, right, who is the man's man. Okay, so this would be like LeBron James or some kind of like five-star general in the army who's very
Hmm.
manly, maybe a little unpolished, right? Things they say might be a little brash. And then we
Hmm.
have the Shao Yang, which is not the manly man, but also then a little bit of refined. Okay, so I would say
Mm.
this would be like professionals, okay, like lawyers, accountants, okay, psychologists, right, maybe
I was going to ask
acupuncturists.
at some point. Okay, gotcha.
Yeah, and then we have the Yang Ming, which is someone who's a little bit more timid, maybe someone who's more into arts or like dancing, right? Or someone who's into
Getting
like
towards the feminine aspects.
yep. So that's the next best Yang type of personality. And then we have Yin. So Yin, we have Tai Yin, which is right, very, very feminine, right? So then this would be someone who is very nurturing. So perhaps like Mother Teresa, right?
Okay.
Someone who is would want to feed you, want to cook for you, want to make sure that they really cater to you. And then there is the Xiaoyin, which is someone who's lesser extreme feminine, who is more professional. So then we have this category of female too. And then the Jiyin would be right, kind of like the tomboy type of characteristics of a female.
Okay.
But then, we say, who's asking too. So from different type of personalities, let's say if it's a Tai Yang talking, have a narrative about all the other ones. So Tai Yang would be a man, right? If LeBron James would describe the others, that would sound different than if, right, you and I would describe all the others. And the idea is that all these different type of aspects of yin and yang exist in each person. And it is best to balance all of that. But with some type of people, one aspect, it dominates over others. So we have, like you said, this gradient of colors, right? Each person like a color, right? So for me, I could be someone who's more Xiaoyang. Okay, I'm not I'm not a professional fighter, all right? Nor am I going out there try to do all these things. So I'm, for the most part, right, I consider myself polished. So then I'm not extremely into fashion. So then I'm somewhere in between.
Okay.
So then,
well, it is a nice shirt you're wearing today, I noticed.
yeah, thank you. I did it just for this podcast. Yeah. So what we want to do is kind of take a step back and look at a person for, right, first we have to assess what kind of person this is. So this comes with a good eye to spot, right, what kind of person this is, and how can we make this person the best of them. Okay. So when you first came in, I would say, okay, so this person is a Xiaoyang person. He has a Xiaoyang body type, and he would be better suited, right, in some type of Xiaoyang treatment. Given also, does it check out with all the tongue information? Okay. So then, let me give you an example. Okay. Would LeBron James do well in fashion?
He's a very talented guy, but maybe not. I'm not, probably not.
Yeah. Or maybe he wouldn't even like to, right? So
Yeah,
likewise,
that's what
nor
I
would
was
I be good in the NBA because I really don't have that kind of aggressiveness to dunk on somebody else, right?
Yeah.
And nor, like, say, if a person who is a tie-in female who's really much wanting to help other people, want to volunteer, want to be involved in the community, wants to help the poor, and this would make a very bad business person. So it's best in our lens is to make a person the best expression of themselves.
Okay.
Yeah.
So let me ask this. So we're talking about the idea of balance here in terms of sort of personality, I suppose. That might be too small of a word, but maybe we'll just stick with that for now, and just self-expression of the person in a holistic way. So the idea is to, like, okay, let me ask it this way.
Sure.
Let's say you have like the perfect person and walks in, like into your office, the perfect personality. Is this someone, if they're, I don't know if this is a good example or not, a good theoretical kind of example. Is this person like like perfectly balanced among the six various qualities here, or are they still in one of the categories but have balanced out the other five?
Yeah, so great question. I wouldn't say there's a perfect person. We would say that this would be a more fluid and balanced person.
So they're dynamic, they're moving appropriately between, so there may be a time where they need to be extremely aggressive and they can do that when it's appropriate. And then on the opposite end, there may be a time where it's very appropriate to be extremely nurturing and they can do that in a natural, like fluid way. Is this sort of what you're talking about?
Um, yes, maybe I would say that um there's other factors in here too. So when
Okay.
people come in, I would observe how they walk, how they speak, and also kind of we say the shin level, right? So that means that, let's say we're all holding eye contact, right? Do you have like a spark in your eye? So that determines how much focus you have. So
Mm,
your focus will then tell me what kind of state of energy level that you're in too.
mm,
So I guess a good example would be, let's say if someone comes in my office, they tend to be really loud. I can
mm.
already hear them. I'm in room 6, all the way in the back, and I hear ding the door, and then it's like this loud voice. Okay, this is a Tai Yang person coming in, so I can already assume this person might be dealing with some kind of anger, right? They tend to be angry.
Mm,
Maybe they tend to be overly like, so they tend to crash. So when they sleep, they crash, right?
mm. Heavy
They
sleeper.
tend to not have patience, right? Although they seems like just uncalled for stereotypes, but that's
Mm,
how we have a baseline of how this person is, right? So
sure.
then perhaps this person needs to be, we need to work on the yin channels of the body so this person becomes more well-rounded. That is the hope.
That makes sense. That makes a lot of sense. And it's interesting. There's part of what makes this conversation so fun, but also so difficult, is that there's so much complexity in what you're talking about, which I really appreciate. And it's going to be so hard to get at all the aspects of what you're looking at. So maybe I'll just comment on one or two aspects here. But
Sure.
um, so it's sort of along the, I love what you talk about, like in terms of balance, that there's like dominant qualities and then maybe more less dominant and recessive qualities, I suppose you could say.
Yep.
And I think similarly, if I was in my office in my practice and I heard someone very loud, if I could hear them in my closed little room out in the front desk, I would be thinking along the lines of, yes, there is a lot of aggression in this person.
Mhm.
Um, and I use aggression in sort of a more general way. It's just means sort of like the outward force of acting on the world is sort of, it can include anger, but it also just means like that outpouring of force.
Right.
But if I see that, it also means that, you know, whoever kind of comes in the room, I'm thinking sort of probably on an unconscious level, but I'm trying to bring balance to what they're doing. So if someone's all the way up here and they're loud and this is causing issues for them, like living up here in this state, then I'm going to bring my voice down. I'm going to moderate and I'm going to balance
Mm.
out the way that they're expressing themselves in order to see, does this bring something extra to them that they're missing? Is this calming their anxiety? Is this opening up new faculties for them in different ways of thinking? And there's other ways of doing this too, but
Right.
it's the same thing. If somebody doesn't have like that spark in their eye, if they're depressed and they're down here and feeling
Right.
really like Eeyore from, what was that?
Yep. Yeah, I hear
Yeah,
you.
feeling like Eeyore from like Winnie the Pooh, then I'm going to actually bring up my voice and work on more like getting them, you know, getting them into some activity, get their fire going in some way, their fire for life. So
Mhm.
I really strongly appreciate this idea of balance and looking at people in this very dynamic way. Um,
Yeah.
and I, yeah, oh, go ahead.
So I was going to add to that. I know it may sound confusing what I said earlier versus just now, is that we try to help people, pursue the best of themselves. And then I also said something about balancing them out.
Mhm.
Sometimes I see that this is tend to be what patients think is that, what can I do to fix this issue? But they didn't see that it's maybe what you're doing, but you've done too much to
Mm,
perpetuate, to make this issue uncontrollable. And I love what you said about, being like aggressive, right? So this person has this natural outward aggression. So this would make a very good, I don't know, police officer, or, if I'm being held hostage, just be like a SWAT
Sure.
technical operator to help me, to rescue me, very brave person. But
Yep.
then if this person isn't having enough yin to control their yang, they might be right. They might be tripping over things or bumping into things because they'll be too eager. So then to
Mm,
help them achieve themselves, so that we introduce a little bit of other aspects. So on the opposite end, if there's someone is too nurturing and too yin who has no yang, then they might be more unmotivated. So then
okay.
they might be too sedentary. So that's
Okay.
also not ideal, right? So then we also introduce a little bit of yang, introduce a little bit of excitement, so then
Yes.
they start feeling better. So that's what I meant by like fluid. And also these 6 categories that I talked about happens that they match up with the 12 acupuncture channels and also 12 hours of the day as well. So let's
Okay.
say, yep, let's say if somebody is having issues waking up at 2, 3 a.m. at night. So sometimes I look at people's tongue, and the tongue is really pale and the tip is red. I would say, okay, well, you may have something with emotionally related, because we consider liver to be connected to the emotions.
Mhm.
And if the person's exhibiting liver symptoms in their tongue, we will say that you must wake up at 2, 3 a.m. in the morning and wide awake. And I'll
Mm,
be right 95% of the time. And that's
mm,
patients usually say, wow, how did you know that from looking at my tongue? Because
yes.
although it seems odd that your hours of sleep doesn't necessarily have to do with the liver or have to do with your behavior, but it all does. Because if you are lacking that Xiao Yin aspect of yourself, then naturally you would be lacking normal functions in hours between 2 to 3 a.m. You'll also be lacking in the hours of, right, the liver and the liver's functions. You'll also be kind of lacking in that control of emotions.
Mm.
Now, is there something like that in psychology that would back me up here?
In terms of looking at the tongue,
Or just,
um,
I guess
one of it,
personality archetypes?
sure. Absolutely. It- well, it's sure. I was thinking along the line. Okay, so let's take what you said about the 6 types of yin and yang. Like very much what you're describing is types of personality, right? You're talking about sort of the natural strengths that people have, natural qualities that they have, that they're have a natural aptitude for, and then during their life they've got to sort of refine some of the other qualities that don't come quite so easily. And that's actually a huge question, because there's many types of personality assessments in psychology, and there's a lot of debate, and people have favorites, but sometimes the science doesn't always agree. But one of the ones that I appreciate is the Enneagram personality types. There's 9 personality types, and also they blend a little bit, and like, let me put it this way, like we have one sort of basic one, and when we're really good, when we're in a really good place, we start to take on balanced aspects of sort of an adjacent personality type. And when we're under a lot of stress, we start to take on the negative aspects of another personality type. So it sort of reminded me of what you were talking about earlier, that people do have sort of a natural, I guess, personality type, but really what you're also trying to do is shore up the parts of the person that really aren't expressing themselves in a balanced way that could be helpful for the entire system. Um,
Wow. Wow. I think I did an Enneagram. This is way before. I think
oh,
when I was on point, I'm a 8, which is a promoter, right?
uh-huh.
Is it?
They can be. They're typically called the challenger.
Okay, okay.
Um, there are people who are. When you spoke about your mom, that sounded actually like like an 8. They're like real, tough kind of person.
Gotcha. What kind of personality types do you best treat in your practice? What are you good at treating?
That's a good question.
Or what do you prefer treating?
That's a better question. Yes. So I treat anyone, and it does call for some dynamic. I think of sometimes my job as being an authentic chameleon, which means that I do have to sort of present differently for each person according to how they communicate and what they need. Sort of similar to what I was talking about earlier, with louder people or quieter people, depressed, anxious. Um, for me, I prefer kind of deeper therapy. It's going into kind of all areas of life, getting deep into history, or really working on that deep stuff. And so people who are more psychologically minded have more insight about kind of what they're going through. I've been in a lot of therapy myself. This is kind of part of my life's mission is to work on myself in a deeper way. My therapy, I do it for people and I love it, but it's also just as much for myself. So I love getting into these deeper areas because I'm constantly, we all have so much that's similar between us, that learning about someone else and helping them on their journey is just the same as working on my own journey.
Wow.
So that would be an Enneagram types. That would be maybe like fours, which are, I think, performers, or nines, which are sort of the crown, very holistic. But for people who aren't as psychologically minded, they're more practical. They're more action, just kind of action oriented. I very much respect that type of personality. I could probably use more kind of practicality. I'm a bit of an idealist, a bit of a dreamer sometimes. I do a lot, but that's kind of my natural state of being, is to I just love generating more questions. I want answers, but often I find that all I can really do is just ask better and better questions about myself and about life. So I enjoy that very much. But for people who are more practical, we may work on levels that are just really working on their thoughts or their behaviors, very concrete things. Just stuff that anybody can work on very easily. So does that kind of answer your question?
Great. So you prefer dealing with patients who are more action oriented, or more
I like the sort of philosophical, insightful,
okay.
not necessarily having a goal, even a specific goal, just like kind of turning up all the gardens and seeing what comes up out of the dirt. But that's certainly not for everybody. And a lot of people are in serious pain and really need help right now, and just on the things that they're focused on. And that's great. Also, I'm very happy to do that. It's very gratifying.
That's awesome. I would say, from my experience or my limited understanding of psychology, I feel like it's very technical, where you can really get down to exactly what the issue is, and it's like a Navy SEAL strike team, precisely extract different type of situations,
Sure.
which I think it's missing in acupuncture, where we're more general to treat a person. And the hope is that, right, we can have this person restored with their own help, that they can pull themselves out of the hole that they're in. But I think that at certain times we do also need psychologists' help to, right, really eliminate the vicious parts, and then acupuncture would then be a great kind of keep them healthy type of thing.
That makes perfect sense. And you just gave me an idea for a great question, I think. So let me ask you two questions at once, and I'll let you take it away. So for the people listening at home, for the therapist listening and for the acupuncturist listening, if I'm a therapist and I'm struggling with what types of struggles could I send a client of mine to an acupuncturist for? That's the first question. How could I suppose your profession augment mine? And then I wanted to ask the vice versa. Like, if you were struggling with someone, is there any time that you would refer them for psychological treatment as an augment to TCM and acupuncture?
Sure. First, do you take insurance?
I do.
Okay, so that is a huge factor for most patients, that they all have insurance. Although I don't take insurance. I would say if someone has very deep trauma within them, I would definitely refer them to psychologists, and even at times, right, refer them to other specialists as well. I also know someone that does energy work, right? Different type of things. So I'm very open-minded in that regard. It depends on what this person is dealing with.
Hmm.
I would also love to know a priest that could do exorcistic practices too. So I think sometimes it's
The Vatican
in the
really
other
does,
way,
yeah. That's a
right?
real thing. From what I understand, the Vatican has exorcists like on their payroll. So I think about that every once in a while. But yeah, please continue.
Oh yeah. So for me, right, I kind of see myself as this like general practice. Maybe I can help most people. However, there is different cases that we refer out. But I also, right, I think it's always a good idea to go to your MD to get the medical proper x-rays and different things, just to rule out the physical aspect to make sure it's nothing serious, such
Yeah.
as cancer or things like that. But I
Even
guess
even for
are there
people in
different?
therapy, it's important as well. You want to make sure people might come in with depression or cognitive issues, and it's important to establish that they don't have a TBI or they don't have anemia or these kinds of things. So that's always the first step, is to have a good relationship with your primary care physician. So that's a great point of yours. I just want to emphasize. I totally agree.
Yeah, but to answer your question, what situations I would refer to a psychologist would be, right, someone who has an ongoing issue that is due to their current situation. So kind of like, let's say if they have they're in a relationship who is abusive, but they can't leave that relationship, or right, if they have family issues at work, but they can't really quit because they need the livelihood. So
Mm,
something very ongoing, then we need a whole village to help, right?
sure.
Maybe I'll even refer them to a trainer to get some exercise. So the more people help from different angles, it's like different legs in the chair. So yeah, so I
Yeah.
just think that some people are more severe cases. In severe cases, then I think everybody can help, even chiropractors.
I like that answer a lot. I think it sounds like hopefully neither one of us are falling too much into the trap of like looking at the world purely through our own lenses, because I'm going to come back to this if we have time, but I have a feeling that you look at the whole world through your very holistic worldview. It's very comprehensive in the way that you talk about things. Like it's very interesting. I sort of feel like you're kind of living in the matrix, that you're seeing kind of code as you just look around. You're saying, oh, lack of yin and too much yin and fire in the belly and these kinds of things as you're just going through the supermarket on people. But in any case, I always respect like having a very open mind and saying, yes, there's times to refer out. There's times to bring in a team approach. So that's something that I think is really, really important. Um, One thing that you mentioned that I think is something that's almost like a public service announcement that's really, really important right now in psychology, and I'd like to get your take on it, since you mentioned it in acupuncture and TCM, is trauma. And we spoke about this a couple of times, and you spoke about it in one of your lectures that I attended last month, I believe. Um, One of the things that really blew my mind when I got into this profession is just how pervasive trauma is and how little it's actually talked about, how narrowly it's conceived. I think everybody knows sort of what trauma is, but we see it in very narrow ways, in terms of somebody had a car crash and they don't want to drive now. They have too much anxiety, or someone, I think the most common example is shell shock, coming back from from armed conflict and dealing with the memories of what occurred. Um, those things are, of course, good examples of trauma. But what I'm learning is that trauma is so much more than that. At least in therapy, most people I see have gone through events that have turned on the trauma responses in their brain and in their bodies, and it affects them kind of continuously throughout their lives. And it just affects so much of our thinking and so much of our behavior that I came to start seeing trauma as I don't know if you ever heard of like the saying, like the history of the world is what do they call it? Germs and guns, or something like it can be explained in terms of all the various turns of humankind can be explained through guns and germs. I think trauma is actually one of them. After each major event that is negative, like a famine across a country or a major conflict, world wars or whatever, regional conflicts, people are traumatized, and their behavior, their thinking changes for generations afterwards, and it continues to shape how people act. and even their children, and you hit on this in your lecture, even their children can take on qualities of being traumatized through just epigenetic changes. The way the DNA expresses itself as it's passed down to your children takes on qualities of how your life has been lived, which has interesting tie-ins with sort of spirituality and this kind of thing. So this conversation can go in so many directions, but I just want to talk just a little bit about it. How do you see very much trauma? How does trauma express itself when people walk in to your clinic?
Sure, sure. I guess the approach to acupuncture is keep your room clean. So the idea is that, right, when you have bugs flying all over the place, right? The modern approach is that, oh, let's call a bug exterminator, and then let's just sanitize the whole place.
Sure.
But right, what we can do is that we can find a source of why is this place have bugs, right? Do you have plants? Like, for example, like if you have plants in your room, then there's gnats flying around, maybe it's from the soil. So then we have to see that, okay, maybe we can get rid of the soil or do something with the soil. So the idea is that when your body is functioning normally, then trauma tend not to stick around.
So there's
Trauma,
an sort of like the energetic flow is sort of what I'm conceptualizing. I know that's only a part.
yeah, yeah, kind of like if someone has a good sleep and then they're have healthy digestive system, then their outlook on life would be different. So then that they wouldn't default on the trauma. That's not to suppress trauma, but personally, I feel like that's how someone can get over trauma. I don't know if that makes sense. I can't remember where I heard this from, is that let's say if you meet a person that is saying that, oh, you know what, I haven't smoked for 3 years, 2 months and 60 hours, right?
Not that they're counting. Yeah.
Right. So very specific. So they're obsessively about smoking, but now they're obsessively about non-smoking. So what we're treating, I guess, is this obsessiveness behavior, so that someone could be right, very cool about it, have a very calm demeanor, and this is the best way to approach kind of healing, is to restore you into your default mode. I think these modes are being taught later in life. It's not a very natural human behavior. Now, this is me speaking. Obviously, different people have different beliefs, but I think natural human behavior is, very kind. So if I see you, we can talk, we can communicate. I love to communicate, love to kind of see what's going on. And then we talk things out. And back in the day, it's believed that heated arguments are not very healthy human behaviors. And right, arguments that lead to war, then that becomes like a demonic, right? Because then casualties in war then becomes a blood sacrifice. So this is, you go to thousands of years ago, acupuncture's raw form is kind of restoring humanity. That's what we're looking to do.
Wow.
Yeah. So in some ways,
That's a profound statement. I mean, that's a bomb right there.
yeah.
Oh, I shouldn't use that. That's the wrong, that's the wrong analogy. Sorry.
Yeah. So I guess obviously everybody has their own ideas about what you want and what humans are. And I love the idea that people can choose to be what they want. But what we want to do is that you can choose to be what you want, but then we want to add the human component, right? The human component is basic kindness, right? Courtesy, and also gentle, and also think about other people and where they come from. Kind of like in Stoic philosophy, there's the 4 virtues, right? So yeah, and I think these virtues are universal, although in Chinese medicine there's 5.
Okay.
Yeah.
I think it's beautiful. I love what you said. It was so beautifully ambitious. that that the idea behind acupuncture is to improve humankind. I mean, that's just like, is that an accurate restatement?
Mhm. So I feel like in trauma is that there is somewhere along the lines, and I hope I don't get canceled for this, but maybe there is some kind of lack of kindness somewhere, right? Whether it is the national trauma we had, right? Whether it's World War II, whether it's Holocaust, whether it's whatever it is. So
Yeah.
then the genetic memories then pass on. So then people have an echo of the past. So they
Yes, this is
feel,
true. I mean, this is science, what you're talking about so far. Just epigenetic changes is absolutely true. Yeah.
yeah. So what we're looking to do is to help people overcome that.
Yes.
Back in the day, when people say, okay, well, how long would me to get rid of this affliction of different issues? Typically, it would say 3 generations, right? So we have
Mm,
to start with you. With your change in your back pain, you're also adapting a different behavior. Then you take that new behavior, you go home, then your family will see you change, then they will start having some kind of change. And then let's say if your kid hasn't had children yet, then that would pass on directly. But even if they had children, the grandchildren also see that this is this new behavior, so then they'd adapt that. And
wow.
yeah, so you know, that's kind of the approach, is this cascading effect, where,
Yes.
and we believe that if you are healthy, then you are also lucky, uh, right? So we avoid conflict because we
Mhm.
want, right? We don't want friction. So it's almost like you drive a car that you hear all kinds of noises. This car is not operating efficiently. So efficiency comes with, right, good conduct, good behavior, good thoughts.
Yes.
And I used to go to church. I used to go to Oak Point Church. Nowadays, I'm a little busy, but I remember this Pastor Bob. He's saying, you know, if life is a if a Bible is like a user's manual for life, right? I
Mm,
really love that. I think that, you know, in some ways, people can use that as a guide to how they conduct. And I 100% believe that
mm,
spiritual practices, whether it is, you know, Christianity, Buddhism, or, you know, Muslim, they can all help us to become better humans. And
mm.
with that said, though, not that doesn't mean if you have pain, you're a bad person, right? It could be that you have pain, but you're meant to learn something from it. I heard this quote is that um, we'll never grow if we never learn the lesson that's meant to deliver through pain.
Mm.
So
That's yes. That is a
yeah,
very, such a potent form of healing. Is not everybody at all times, but often when people come in with serious troubles that don't have an easy solution, especially, we do start to look for meaning. And this is part of a lot of therapies. Existential would be one of the original ones, but we can often try and find what could be the meaning behind this particular struggle. If there, or if you want to put it this way, if you had to grow in some way that you liked, and make the best of a bad situation, what would that be? What can we kind of reap from the suffering that's going on here? And that's actually very powerful. People can withstand so much and function so well under such difficult circumstances if that understanding, if there's that feeling of meaningfulness in what they're doing. It's just
mhm.
so potent. It really can't be overlooked. So I love what you're saying.
Oh yeah, absolutely. I feel like this is a general approach that encapsulates the grander scale, but on a
Mhm.
technical perspective for acupuncture, you know, we would see where is this pain being held at? Where is this trauma being held at? So
Yes.
remember the 12 acupuncture meridians, the 12 different things that corresponds to the 6 aspects. So the 12 major acupuncture channels runs through your body. So then we then see which longitudinal channel in your body meridians is the pain nearby. So then we
Mhm.
would then implement a treatment pattern to correct and give flow to that area.
Mm.
I think that, right, psychology, let's say if someone's experiencing, oh, forgive me if I mess it up. Let's say if they're experiencing child abuse, but maybe not everybody's view on the child abuse is the same. So then you approach it differently. So same thing here. Let's say if someone's experiencing sadness, not everybody's sadness is in the hip. Some people's
Mm.
sadness is in the lower back. So
Mm.
then we target the lower back, and the back pain goes away and the sadness also goes away. So that
Mm.
it comes simultaneously.
Mm.
So, you know, I would love to hear how you think about what I said, is that, you know, if you think about the body holistically, right, your mind is part of your body. So your body is a manifestation of your mind.
Yes. Well,
So,
that's Eastern medicine has been way ahead for a long time. And I had a professor say recently, Rene Descartes, he was a a proponent of mind-body dualism, the separation. And my professor just straight out said something I'll probably never forget. He said Descartes screwed the world for 400 or 500 years by making this distinction between the body and the mind. And in psychology, we're rediscovering for the last 120 some years that that's a completely false thing, that these are different categories. There are things that are distinct about the mind and body, but those distinctions blur once you get to a deeper level of understanding, and there probably are really very few distinctions. So what you're saying makes a lot of sense to me. And within the last maybe 3 decades, the somatic component, the bodily component of psychology has really moved to the forefront, especially with regard to trauma, but not just trauma. You were saying something like, somebody's pain may reside in their hip, and this does correspond to medians, as you were talking about. The people I treat with trauma, it's usually most easy to see that they will have pain in their body, and if they may not give a lot of thought to this. They may just think that I have really tight shoulders, I have a really tight back, or I just have this sort of fibromyalgia and sensation. And this is something they're used to thinking of as a purely on the physical level. But through very simple exercises, when people get into touch, and people who've had serious histories or tough histories, if you can get them to focus on just these areas of their body, and just, instead of resisting the pain as we usually do, which is good and normal and adaptive, because you can't be feeling your pain all the time. You got to work, you got to do stuff. But when you get into the appropriate atmosphere and you start feeling that pain, often people become very full of emotions. Memories come up. Strong feelings start bubbling up right in that room. And often people are at first very puzzled about that. They're not used to thinking of emotional memory as being stored in the body. But of course, this is completely true. We think of our brain as being most of our nervous system, but our whole body is a brain. Our whole body is a nervous system. Our whole body has memory and action tendencies and all these things. So what you're saying, to me at least, makes perfect sense.
oh yeah, and I believe that the tension being held on to the body is also somewhere in the brain. There's a little muscle, if you can envision, being holding on to a concept they're unwilling to let go. And the
Yes.
idea is letting go. And I
Yes.
believe that, psychologists help so many people by helping them work through the problem, pinpointing the problem. And then also, if you can make them cry, right, then that's releasing that tension that they're holding on in the back, which then would have a direct impact on their physical pain. At
That
least
gets
that's what
Oh,
I think.
go ahead. I'm a little excited. Go ahead.
Yeah, no, go ahead. That was it. That's to say that that's my limited understanding of, what's going on. So,
Yes, and actually, you hit on a really important point. Is that one of the things that people draw from really difficult experiences? You said, like, there's this core idea that they're holding on to, probably a false idea, and a lot of us get false ideas about ourselves because of experiences we've had in the world. It's one of the super common things, especially with trauma, that life can happen to you, something or someone can hurt you, assault you in some way, and that had maybe nothing to do with any decision you've ever made. It just was one of those things. but our minds are meaning making machines, and they will turn what happened and make it very personal to us. So often people who have been through something very difficult come out with a misconception about themselves. I'm flawed. I'm unlovable. I'm a broken person. And this is not a true concept. This is something that their mind has come to believe is true because of what's happened to them through their experience. And it's often a very tightly held, it could be a sticky issue. This can be like kind of a core belief with somebody. It's not truly core in my philosophy, but it can certainly feel like that, and often take on qualities of a core belief.
Mhm. Yeah, absolutely. And I love that there is a guide that you're helping people to kind of move forward. I think that acupuncture I see it as more of a reset. So then
Mm,
people come in, we let them let go. So first thing people may feel after acupuncture treatment is they feel super relaxed. And they
yeah,
feel,
I remember.
oh,
Yeah,
everything is
absolutely.
new.
Some of
I
my
can,
best naps have been in your office in those chairs.
yeah,
Man, you put the needles in, and I close my eyes, and then it feels like 30 seconds later, the assistant is coming in to get me ready to go. And it feels like it's been, it's 40 minutes. It feels like it's been a half a minute or something.
yeah. I refer to a lot of chiropractors or physical therapists for different things. The
Mm,
patients come in and say, okay, I was supposed to see a chiropractor and physical therapist. What's the best time to go to them versus you? I would say
mm,
we do acupuncture first. We can get your body and muscle to relax, and then we'll
yes.
send you there. And the chiropractor will have the best adjustment, you know, of they're ever had. And I also
Wonderful.
believe that after acupuncture, if I sent people right to a psychologist where they can guide them to the right path, right? So they don't have that resistance. I think that'll be very, very productive.
One of the things that I'm really loving about this conversation is the fact that I I'm very drawn to the idea of sending. I think I probably will. I will keep this in mind for sure. Who I could send, because um, I very much believe in my form of treatment, but I can see opportunities for how people can benefit from being able to get into a more relaxed state. Some of the more, even some of the deeper aspects of the physiology from your perspective that I don't quite grasp yet. The way you describe them, I can very much sense that there is a rational, systemic philosophy behind that. So I assume that, like, I get the feeling that this is a big structure that's very well understood, even if I don't get it. But that I'd be able to send someone to you, and they could do some of the work that would be beneficial for what they might do in therapy. Whether it's just simple relaxation, which is very helpful, getting some of the defenses and the anxiety down so we can access the deeper things and do it in a more safe way. And as well as kind of bringing along some of the other aspects that you could bring into treatment that I don't understand quite so well. I'll have to figure out how to language this for clients if they're interested. Maybe a discussion for another time.
Yeah.
But it's really nice to have the feeling that we could work like very complementary in a very complementary way. I really, I'm enjoying that. Um,
Yeah, likewise. Yeah, if you like to set up another talk, I would love to. I love speaking with you, and so
yeah, me too. How
yeah.
are we? Oh wow, we're in an hour already. Oh, and all I have more questions now than what I
I
started.
know.
This hour has flown by for me, Dr. Lucky. If you would like to do this again sometime, I'd be more than happy. This has been, what I'd say to my clients is, if you're not, if we look at the clock together and after an hour it feels like it's flown by, then you can just rest assured that we've been doing good work. We're in those energetic areas, and you have such a good energy you're so generous with your energy and your knowledge that it's very easy to get swept up into this and just generate, have so much more energy come out of that and so much excitement. So I would love to continue this conversation anytime with you, Dr. Lucky. I really appreciate your time.
Yeah, no, likewise. And I guess I'll close with this. I studied ancient Chinese writings, and in the old writings, actually, there isn't a subjective and objective. I think
Hmm.
that is a modern language structure. I think Chinese is changed to that too. So it's me talking to you. I'm helping you. But the truth is a mutual help. So by helping me, by helping you, I'm also helping me, right?
Mm,
By talking to you, I'm also learning to you, and also learning and hearing what I'm saying. So
yes.
there's also always it goes both ways. So likewise, as much as you taken away, I've also taken away from this conversation as well. So I love to engage in that. And I think that's really great that you already think that way, that talking to your patients is also helping you. I think that is actually the truth. I think the modern
Mm,
way people of thinking have been skewed to think that
yeah.
it's only one way, but it's always both ways.
Yes, I think that's great, and it generates just gratitude and enjoyment if you can see if you have if you can see your work in that way. It's such a gift. Um, so yeah, I really that's a great way to end.
Great. Yeah.
Well, thank you so much, and I'm looking forward to the next opportunity. And anyone who's I didn't say it yet, but anyone who's got who's listening, who's considering coming to see Dr. Lucky, I'll shamelessly plug Dr. Lucky. He didn't ask me to do this, but I will say that as you can tell, I really enjoy his company. I think he's very, very proficient. He's got a heck of a mind, and each time he speaks, you get the impression that there's so much more behind what he says that you could probably speak for an hour on just about any subject. He has a very potent mind. And I also found my treatment to be effective, and the way it was facilitated was very, very comfortable, well explained. Um, but maybe effective is maybe the most important thing to underline. I do feel much better after our treatment. So
Great.
yeah. So I'll
Yeah.
say that was all me. Dr. Lucky he's not paying me or anything. I really do mean that. So
Yeah.
anyway,
Thank
it's
you,
been a
Chris.
real pleasure. Yeah.
Appreciate it. So,
Okay.
okay. Talk to you soon.
Okay. Bye now.
Bye.